Oh, okay. Now, so now attendees can join us.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your joining us today for On Current Watch. My name is Monica Esparza, and I'm the moderator for today's panel discussion. I am a trustee of the Renewal of Life Trust and board member of the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative. Joining in facilitation of today's event is Roz Ahmadi with the Virginia League of Conservation Voters. Roz, would you like to tell us a little bit about the Conservation League?
Of course. Thank you very much, Monica. My name is Roz Ahmadi. I'm with the Virginia League of Conservation Voters. Virginia League of Conservation Voters is the political voice for the conservation community, and more relevant to this event, we have been heavily engaged in EJ collaboration and EJ work, and greatly value that aspect of the environmental justice. I'm glad to be here and very excited for our program today.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate having you. With that, we want to talk a little bit about the purpose of today's gathering, which is aligned with the mission of the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative, which is to build health and wealth of communities and help to reduce the disproportionate impact of environmental hazards. Mobilizing grassroots organizations and individuals to speak for themselves and build alliance for equitable policies and practices. You will hear some of these voices today about how industry and public officials are treating our communities in 2021, as well as elevate strategies that have helped and will help to protect communities better. We need greater protections for air, water, land, and ourselves as a part of these, because the consequences of environmental injustice on public health, the economy, and our environment is too great. And as we know, our work is not alone. So with that, we'd like to invite you to watch a clip with us from Bishop William Barber II of the Poor People's Campaign and the National Call for Environmental Justice. Justice.
We won't be silent. We can't be silent. Silent is not in us. For if we become silent, we become complicit with the oppression. Our first stance against oppression and injustice is to say something, is to speak out, and not just when it's hurting us, but when it's hurting our brothers and sisters, and to know that the time frame of injustice has already been too long. The king once told some folk who said, wait, he said, we've already become the chief waiters in history, and waiting time is over. And even if things don't change, you will never again hear silence from us until change comes. I want to welcome all of you to this National Moral Monday of Poor People's Campaign. And simply welcome every one of you who's come today. We got work to do today, y'all. And particularly if you look on the screen, you will see what we're going to need you to call and email senators in this moment, the United States Senate. We today are focusing on this whole issue of wages and poverty and ecological devastation. Because here's what we know, and I want to be very clear and succinct about this for the media. Everywhere there is the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, of low wages and poverty, there's ecological devastation and environmental injustice. And everywhere there's environmental injustice, there's low wages and there is poverty. The truth of the matter is the very people who are right, and I don't even care if they're Democrats, who are refusing to vote, overrule a parliamentarian's rule, is not even a constitutional officer, and make sure that we pass COVID relief with 15 are the same forces that stand against ecological, stand with corporations and against communities that are battling ecological devastation. And you have to understand it. These are not separate fights. These are fusion battles, and we have to join them together. Somebody's been poisoning our water. Somebody's been paying us too little. Somebody's been keeping healthcare from us. Somebody's been giving more to corporations, even in the midst of a pandemic, than they give to the essential workers who keep this country alive, who've been the first to go to work, the first to get infected, and the first to get sick, the first to die, but the last to get treated. And what makes it even worse in places of ecological devastation, like you will hear from testimony today, is that they, even before the pandemic, were exposed to a pandemic of sickness. Never will forget being with my dear friend Clapper Flowers, a line that the sister said in Alabama. She came out in her wheelchair, where they have to pump sewage out of her yard and others' yards every week. And I thought at first I had misheard what she had said, and I went back after and listened at the tape. This was before the pandemic. She said, because of what is going on here, because of this devastation, because of this environmental justice, of course, she said it in my own words, I have every disease but AIDS because of the pollution. Before the pandemic, so the communities you will hear from today, they were at extra risk even before the pandemic. You will hear from someone who's even been on a hunger strike with 300 other people. So we join today. And we need you to make sense of what we need to pass COVID relief now. We need all of it, healthcare now, we need living wage now, and we need to focus on ecological devastation. And we need an infrastructure plan that will, in fact, do infrastructure in communities that can transform ecological devastation.
Thank you all so much for joining again for today's program. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I encourage you to watch that entire video. So as he talked about, there are people in Chicago who are on hunger strike. You will hear stories about that are not being told about the ice storm that happened in Texas. There are people who are still suffering. So I will later put the link in the chat for us to continue to watch their viewing, but it's so important that our stories are now coming together today. So with that, we have today 9 panelists who are going to spend about 10 minutes to share their stories of impact. They are going to describe their activist and advocacy experiences with government representatives, and discussing improvements for public engagement around environmental justice. We invite you to also participate in the chat dialogue, and to use the question and answer feature if you have any questions or you have some comments that you'd like to submit, so that they do not get lost in the chat. So right, let's get right to it. I want to thank our panelists again for being present, for all of the hard work that you all do. Let's connect with this national network and make sure that our Virginia story is highlighted and told. And so the first speaker that we have today is Ms. Muriel Branch Miller with AAMD Pine Grove Community in Cumberland County. Thank you so much.
Good morning, and many thanks to the Virginia League of Conservation Voters and the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative, of which AMMD Pine Grove Project is a member organization, for inviting us to tell our story on this panel today. I thank Sister Queen for listening to us and for bringing together these impacted communities in this way. I'm Muriel Miller Branch, and I'm founder and president of the AMMD Pine Grove Project. We initially started as the AMMD Family Association. And our main purpose was to bring family together for family reunions and genealogical research. But in May of 2018, we learned that the school that many of us attended was going to be auctioned for delinquent taxes. So the Family Association raised the funds in May of 2018 to pay the delinquent taxes and rescue the school. About a month later, we received a letter from Green Ridge Recycling and Disposal Company saying that they were proposing to site a landfill right in the middle of our historic community. Subsequently, we began to receive certified letters, excuse me, from the Cumberland Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission, Cumberland Planning Commission. They were both inviting us to speak at a series of hearings, public hearings that they were holding in June. We showed up along with many, many members of the community. And we spoke in opposition. We raised questions about what kind of studies had been done, cultural studies, archaeological studies, what would happen to the cemeteries, particularly the unmarked enslaved cemeteries in the area, questions about which they had no answers. Neither did the Board of Supervisors, but they gave approval for the permit for the landfill to go forward. So in June, our focus became twofold. We were now focusing on saving our school, the preservation of our school. But now we had to focus on protecting and preserving our community, which was at risk. We started meeting monthly at Pine Grove School to keep the community both engaged and informed. We formed a environmental justice committee, and then we connected with the Sierra Club and the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative and Preservation Virginia, and began to bring to bear other organizations, both on the historic preservation side and the environmental justice side. And what we found was that there was this tremendous intersectionality between the two, because the siting of these landfills and other corporate polluter industries, polluting industries, usually choose underserved communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and poor people. That is by design. And then because they believe we don't have a voice, and they've been able to get away with polluting our communities and dividing our communities. At this point, the permit is in stage 1A with the Department of Environmental Quality. In October of last year, we had an opportunity to comment send in comments for the Army Corps of Engineers during their open comment period. Unfortunately, the way DEQ, the Army Corps of Engineers, the legislature, the way they communicate with people like us, communities like us, is through the internet. Well, hello. We're an internet desert. We're a food desert. So sending information, registering for things and all using the internet does not reach the community that we serve. Our children in Cumberland, the students, have to go to 6 hotspot sites in the community in order to access their school lessons, to get their work done. So that is definitely not a way. But getting back to the Army Corps of Engineers, that comment period was extremely successful because we went to the community. We set up at a local store and we took our computers and our hotspots and helped the community members create their comments, and then we sent them in. We were aided in that effort by an alert that the Sierra Club put up for us. And I think we received over 500, no, we didn't receive it. The Army Corps of Engineers received over 500 comments about the landfill. Most of them opposing it on one of those 4 areas that they had to consider. One, of course, was the historic resources and the effect that it would have on that. We also have started a collaboration with, in partnerships with the University of Virginia Environmental Law Clinic and Community Engagement Clinic. They have been watching for the regulatory and statutory things that have been going on. And so what we've tried to do is to just build this coalition of people who can help us either with our preservation effort, and they're one and the same. If we preserve our school, we preserve our community, we preserve I call them 2 ecologies, our historic ecology and our physical ecology. To that end, we wrote and applied for and received historic designation, both on the state and the local and the national historic registries. And that has helped because that gives us a little bit more clout in, fighting the landfill. In 2020, Preservation Virginia placed Pine Grove community on their list of the 20 most endangered communities in Virginia. That has been a tremendous help in fighting for the community. If you would like to know more about the Pine Grove Project, please visit us at ammdpinegroveproject.com. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Miller Branch. We do appreciate your opening up the program with that historic reference and sharing your story. The next story that we will hear, or the next person we will hear from today is Kirk Islet from Pemmon Hills in Northern Virginia.
That's a tough act to follow, let me tell you. Thank you, Ms. Branch. That's a very inspiring story, and I can feel what you're going through and your community is going through, and I feel our issue may be small in comparison, but I think we're part of the same movement and trying to do the same thing. So I live in Pemmon Hills. It's a small neighborhood in Northern Virginia. It's historically a blue collar neighborhood. These are all little 800 square foot houses built for veterans after World War II, and lots of rentals, little tiny frame houses. But we're surrounded by very wealthy communities like McLean and Falls Church City. And so Washington Gas in our community is rerouting their transmission pipeline. And transmission pipelines are not pipelines that service the community. They're pipelines that are just moving a lot of gas from one area to another. So now the current transmission pipeline is on a arterial roadway, Highway 7, outside the neighborhood. But Washington Gas decided it would be cheaper if they could just cut through our little neighborhood and put this transmission pipeline in. This is a high capacity line. It's 20 inches, 2 feet in diameter. So it's like, I mean, if you look at it, it's a very large pipeline, whereas the old transmission pipelines were more about, or the ones that serve your community are about like that size. This is a high capacity pipeline, very large, and they're wanting to put it through the community. They already have a route. They already could use the old route. They're just trying to save time and money by cutting through our neighborhood. Their permit's been denied twice. And then somehow, after denied twice, the same agency that denied it, someone not at the top slipped an acceptance through. And so now it's now moving the project further. All of the government officials in the area, from local to state senators, all agree it's a bad idea and it shouldn't happen. But everybody kind of throws their hands up saying, well, it's not, I don't have any teeth. There's nothing I can do. There's no way I can, everyone's resigning themselves that their power is not enough to change this. There have been similar pipelines like this that have caused explosions and damage, injury, even death. So we're very worried about having such a pipeline in our neighborhood. If there's any construction and people have to put new water mains out into the road, are people going to be able to navigate this gas pipeline appropriately and not cause any damage or even health or death issues? So one of the ways we feel like this, because our community is almost 50% people of color, it's definitely an EJ issue. But also, this is something that's going to be ongoing throughout Virginia. These pipelines are going to be replaced throughout the state. So these large transmission pipelines, the old ones, are going to be replaced by these new, like 2-foot high pressure pipelines. And if they're going to pick on Pemmit Hills up here in Northern Virginia, they're going to do the same thing to communities throughout Virginia. The communities they feel, as Muriel had just said, communities that they feel don't have the clout or the political savvy to fight it, they're going to route these large pipelines through. And if we can kind of set precedent here that this is not safe, it's not environmentally adequate, then, and put kind of like the parameters in place, then that would help the entire state. In the sense that right now, one of the things we're running against too is there's no teeth in anything. There's no, when we go to the public officials, their line is that they don't have any teeth to stop this. Well, then that's where I feel like the EJ Council and the ear of the governor are, well, how do we establish that sort of thing? How does a community like ours or like Pine Grove, when they have an issue like that, where are those teeth created so that people have an adequate way to stop their community from being pushed around by larger corporations and forced to take on things like these pipelines or a landfill or what have you. So going to the questions that Ms. Esparza had said, I've kind of clarified the community impact we're having here. I've kind of shown the government officials, they'll listen, but no, and everyone, kind of gives you agreement to your face. But when it comes to, okay, well, how can you help us? What can you do? Everybody kind of washes their hands. And statewide, for more immediate impact, would be the EJ Act is a very noble act, but it doesn't have any teeth. It doesn't have any way of enforcement. So it's more just kind of gives nice, beautiful words, but it's not giving anybody any way to really sit down and make a difference. And I feel for the EJ Council, that's a great opportunity for us to get the ear of the governor, get the ear of the state legislature, and find ways to enact things that will give us more access to some sort of ability to change things on a legal front.
Thank you so very much. Really appreciate those comments, and we have lots of work to do. I want to remind everybody to, if you have questions or even answers to some of the discussions, some of the questions that are posed today, feel free to post them in the question and answer. Thank you again, Mr. Islett. Your commentary is truly appreciated. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Lynn Godfrey with the Sierra Club, who will discuss 2 jurisdictions in Virginia.
Hey, Lynn, I think you might be muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you very much for the League of Conservation Voters for having us on to discuss this very important environmental issue, this civil rights issue, and this human rights issue regarding environmental justice. My work with the Sierra Club as a career and my lived experience as an African-American woman and my learned experience as an academic has taught me, and working in this space with the Sierra Club, this common thread that we see throughout the country really, but we see it right here in Virginia, how communities of color, specifically African-American communities and indigenous communities, are disproportionately impacted by the build out of fossil fuel and dangerous frack gas. I work with the Stop the Pipelines project. So right here in Chesapeake and Hampton Roads, we have seen the culmination of 3, right here in Chesapeake, of 3 extraordinary gas pipelines infrastructures that would terminate it right here in Chesapeake. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline would have terminated here. The Southside Connector is a local infrastructure that was built as of yet no gas. They've destroyed wonderful people of colors communities to build a gas line that is to date no gas is pumping through there, and as well as what we defeated last year with the Virginia Natural Gas, the HIP, which was called the Header Improvement Project. All of those projects would have terminated right here in Chesapeake, all throughout predominantly Black people of color and working class people's neighborhoods. I think, as Reverend Barber, as the video that we saw earlier kind of sums it up. I mean, we have an issue in this country of racism, and it is very prevalent in every institution, whether that is energy, healthcare, education. We're communities of color disproportionately just impacted by these situations. So that's right here. Three pipelines would have ended right here. We also saw recently with the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, who wants to build a combined heating and power system right there in Portsmouth. With cumulative impact, they're a Superfund site. They've been polluting the neighborhood for decades. You have a very densely populated neighborhood. And so that was the first case after the Environmental Justice Act was executed that DEQ could show what its intentions are as far as communities of environmental justice communities. So where I am right now, I am with the adage that says, I don't believe what you say because I see what you do. They are saying that they're reaching out to the community, but we don't see any evidence of that. During that whole hearing process, DEQ expert provided to to the board, to the Air Pollution Control Board. I mean, just a whole scenario of how and why this plant is not, would not impact the community. We know that that community has an extraordinary high asthma and lead rates, and they just went and just distorted the data. We're seeing the same thing in a community now in Pittsylvania County with the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And with that pipeline, the compressor station that they're proposing in a highly community of color as well as indigenous historical neighborhood in Chatham, they did hire a consultant to conduct an environmental justice assessment. But that was hampered by the pandemic, the social and racial upheaval that we're going through because of at that time during the spring and early summer, during the murder of George Floyd, and during the commemoration of Bloody Monday right there in Danville when the police murdered Black folks back in the 60s. So they're doing the same thing. They have not did adequate outreach. The Mountain Valley Pipeline presented their revised application to DEQ. It is totally different from misrepresented what the consultant had found in the assessment. And instead of them, so we have petitioned them to stop the process and solve this problem. As of yet, we have not heard from them yet. So those are the things that, you know, you want to reach out to elected officials at the federal and at the local level about. We want to, especially African-American elected officials, because there's been a lag in us understanding the impact, the racial and social impact of environmental justice and racism. And even though right here in Chesapeake, we have our elected officials that I have reached out to have them understand that it is a civil rights issue. You know, we need jobs, we need healthcare, we need education, but we also need clean air and water. We need mitigation against storm resiliency. You know, a lot of these neighborhoods, especially African-American neighborhoods in Hampton Roads, will be impacted by sea level rise and storm. There's no, right now, there's no adequate preparedness plan in place to mitigate, you know, where, you know, think about Katrina, where would they go? How would they be impacted? The houses and that sort of thing. So we're working really hard to disseminate knowledge, especially among, we have a Democratic House and Senate at the state level, and we have the same thing at the federal level. So I think the time is prime for us to really do some massive outreach to our elected officials and outreach to the community. Now, as far as DEQ's, the second part of this framing is DEQ doing the EJ study. I don't think they have what phase they are in any of this study. I really do not think that they have moved forward even with hiring developing a environmental justice department. So it's really hard to tell, you know, what that is, but just from the Pennsylvania, where they are in the phases as far as developing some of the things that was recommended during the environmental justice study. But I can tell you from the Pennsylvania case that the outreach was totally hampered. I mean, they gotta move outside of the box. You know, they had a hearing and they just listened to, and during that hearing, we had a nice output of community members who did come out and they voiced their opposition to the compressor station that Mountain Valley Pipeline is proposing to build. But other than that, there is no other outreach to the community. I mean, they need to get creative. They need to really, there seemed to be a disconnect between DEQ and the board. So there seemed to be it needs to be some collaborative or some processes for those two systems or institutions to meet so that we can ensure that proper and adequate environmental justice outreach to the community, what we call meaningful. What is meaningful? I think we need to quantify that and identify that. So that's what I think we really need to work with DEQ to ensure that the systems that they pay the consultants, to conduct, that they are really are going, excuse me, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Scammers calling all the time in the morning. But yeah, we really need to engage DEQ at this time to see where they are in this process. I mean, there were categories of actions that they're supposed to have been working on, such as authority, leadership, intergovernment coordination, staff capacity, and community relations and engagement and capacity. And I know that community relations and engagement and capacity were supposed to have been phase one. But when you go to the website, and I've called them, I have not been able to get any answers to see where they actually are in this process. So it's difficult to tell. So, well, one of the tests will be the Pennsylvania County compressor station that is currently the comment section. The comment deadline is March 10th. So that would be a test of what their intentions really are. Norfolk Naval Shipyard was one, and we saw that, and this one would be another one. But yeah, but they definitely need to improve that process.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Godfrey. We truly appreciate that comprehensive overview of, you know, what's going on around the state, historical, stateside, what the community's been doing. That was just perfect. Thank you so very much. Next, we'd like to hear from Bonita Cotman, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bonita Lewis from Charles City County. I'm with the C5 group, a founder of the C5 group here in Charles City. We were formed back in June of 2019 in response to finding out that there were 2 natural gas, frack gas power plants coming into our community, and no one knew about those power plants. So we went to the air board meeting the following day, and basically we did not have a chance to say anything. We were not allowed to, you know, voice our opinions, even though the day prior, our local official had met with us and said, hey, we're going to give you guys a voice. We know you may not have, you know, of course, they said they've been telling the community since 2014, but no one has been able to locate where they've been notified. So that was our first experience with the local government basically silences the public. Of course, we have a huge landfill here that's been here.
I think you're breaking up, Bonita.
1990.
Okay.
They came with the promise of building a new, and our schools are 132, but official, we're sacrificial phone. Can you hear me?
We had some difficulty hearing you before, but we can now.
All right. Can you hear me? I'm getting on Wi-Fi. Of course, we're also in the same position with other rural communities where our internet is just really bad. But as I was saying, the landfill was proposed here in the 90s, bringing a school. And to date, they're still operating in the community, but our schools continue to deteriorate. There's smells. We have ideas that there may be cancer clusters because of the dump being here, but our local officials will not give us any type of data to support or deny that's what's happening. So we have a couple of different issues in Charles City as far as environmental impact. We're a community of Native and Black people. We're the majority. The local government, I'm looking at the questions here, the local government, they have not been so supportive of the group and what we do. As a matter of fact, they do a lot of bashing. I just say it frankly, it's true. Bashing to the group. We have definitely reached out to our state officials, and they've been pretty supportive in what we've asked for, you know, for the most part. They could do a lot better in that sense. Right now, one of the biggest impacts to our group is, of course, as everyone else has said, is notification and getting the word out. So what has happened, unfortunately, our community, which I'm still learning so much about, historically was impacted by the paper bag test. So literally you have community citizens, neighbors who are related today, and they can't say anything, or they haven't been able to say anything. And that mindset is still live and well. So they're using, I feel like in a sense, they're using that long time thing happening as a divisive way to keep the community, separate. So you have, the Native Americans with one view and the African Americans with another, and you have the local government kind of pulling on that and using that, in my opinion, as a way to keep us separate. When we try to get information out, it's shut down. Once let me get it right, the Army Corps of Engineer recently sent out something saying they're expanding the landfill. And basically what they're going to do is not get more acreage, but they're going to open up more sales. So what the county government, when we put that out, the C5 group put that out just to, to say, hey, you can comment on this particular thing that's, happening or about to happen. The local government spent that and said that we were lying, that they weren't expanding the dump because they're not, acquiring any more acreage. So we basically used exactly what the Army Corps of Engineers said as far as why they was, opening up the comment period to give out to the community. And they spun that and said that, don't believe them because we're not expanding the dump. Well, you are expanding the dump because you're bringing in more trash. So, it's kind of a play on words. So we get that a lot. With trying to, inform our community. So that's kind of been our experience with local government. Hasn't been very good. Improvements for public engagement. So that's hard because I've been having a problem with that myself. I am 41, so I'm kind of used to the internet. I use it every day for work. My kids use it, and things like that. We have 5 different internet connections coming into my house. I work in IT. I can afford that. The average household here cannot afford that. That's not a priority to them to have internet. But for me, it's how I work. It's how my kids go to school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as far as public engagement and environmental justice planning, I really don't know. I'm kind of lost. I'm still like a baby to this, all of this. Of course, with COVID happening, we can't kind of, engage people the way we could in the past. So that's a barrier. So it's kind of hard to say. But as far as from a governmental, I think anything that we could do to start more initiatives around more environmental justice education, because prior to doing this, I had no idea that environmental justice was a thing. So just at a basic level, getting the public that information and how it impacts them will be good. Of course, when we went to the water board hearing, all the people that showed up in June of 2019, one of the things they said they were going to do was do a subcommittee for EJ issues. But as someone else said, we haven't seen a lot of movement on that, because they felt as though one of the members, I think Hoagland, he felt as though we were silenced. So on the face, it looked good and it's sounding good, but we don't feel a lot of movement there. So if we could get a way to push those type of things or have a little bit more backing in that, I think that will help with us having a voice in these type of things going forward. And also, I'm sorry, I have to take a page from Ms. Muriel. C5 has a website, c5groupinform.com, and we're on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you guys for your time and having me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lewis. We truly do appreciate your participation and your insight. I also have heard that conversation that we don't know, we haven't participated, that we're not there, but in fact, we've been here. The organizations have been, the Environmental Justice Collaborative maybe has not been around for decades, but we're here now. And we're inviting everybody to join in partnership as well. We'll talk a little bit about that, further in the program. But But thank you so much for your expressions. Next, let's talk to Kathy Selvage from
Wise.
Wise County. Thank you.
Yeah, it took a while to get a hang to the video, so the wise I never did get. Good morning. I sent along some slides that Raj may put up. But the first I want to say I'm from Wise, Virginia, Wise County. And on the first slide, I just put a brief list of things that I've been involved in over a number of years. I was actually a member of the leadership team that founded Southern Appalachian Mountain Stewards. They received a Greenie Award after 1 year. I worked on the mile-long petition against Dominion's plant being placed in Wise County. I utilized coal country as a backdrop to travel across the state to various locations to collect signatures, along with other organizations in support. I was the recipient of St. Francis Ecological Award. I'll shorten it and say the Sowers of Justice. That was in 2006, and I'm not Catholic. So there you go. Worked on 2 documentaries, both Coal Country and the Electricity Ferry. I received no pay for either one of those. I was a citizen lobbyist at the federal level for the Clean Water Protection Act for several years in a row at the federal level, and have devoted many years of service as a board member and advisory council member to Appalachian Voices. So that's a bit about me. Now for Wise County. Briefly, I will say that we are a mono economy, and our economy is the extractive industry. Approximately a third, 35% of our entire land surface in the county that I live in has been destroyed by mountaintop removal mining. In a few adjoining counties, there is over 8,600 gas wells, most of which are classified as fracked. But our residents here have never used gas. It's never been permitted. Industry uses it, but not residents. Results, of course, are destroyed streams and habitat, wildlife habitat. Our citizens' health and longevity is placed at risk. And the quality of our life is drastically altered in the community. We have a lack of gainful employment because we sacrifice to college educate our children, and then they become our best export because a college graduate usually doesn't want to work on a strip job or extract gas. So that's a bit about our county where I live. And it's always been that way. We were early in the 1900s, we were already extracting coal, but by different means. My experience with governmental agencies have been a lot with the Division of Mine Land Reclamation, or DMLR. It is under DMME, and that is found in the Commerce Department of the state of Virginia. So it gives you an idea about what they think the true meaning or the purpose of their work is. But anyway, I've had a lot of engagements along with many others and other organizations with them on surface mine permits in Wise County and the surrounding area, because all of the entire conglomerate of the coal mining community and gas is congregated in the Big Stone Gap office. I've also had some interactions with the EQ, both at our local Southwest Virginia DEQ on air permit violations, in particular after the Dominion plant was built. But there was many hearings, local hearings, and hearings in Richmond. I attended a hearing in 2006 in Richmond on the power plant. That's how far back my work on that went. We have recently learned that they were going over their air permits, and on some days, those air permit violations exceeded 46% of their permitted amount. So I've also attended a lot of hearings on waterways re the total maximum daily load. That has to do with DEQ actually trying to tell you how much pollution you can dump into a stream. You know, that's what they do to our bodies with air too, is they're trying to regulate how much pollution you put into it. How much can you take? They've pushed the limit. I don't want to get too excited here. Anyway, those are really important because in the long term, those streams and waterways are staying at risk over literally decades. I've attended and participated in public hearings on the coal ash treatment from the additional power plant that we have located right on the banks of the Clinch River, one of the best ecological features that we have in the whole region that has not been totally destroyed. I have tried to interact with the DEQ, our Southwest Virginia Regional Office, on community waterways that are affected directly by mining. That has to do with coal slurry, it has to do with sedimentation, washing off the strip jobs, and when we have rainfall, then that's how the sedimentation ends up in the waterways. I've tried to interact with them on that. It's not possible. And I think the reason it's not possible, or this is what they indicate to me, it's not possible because it's not in their jurisdiction. If it's on a mine site or near a mine site, they say that's DMME. So I have, there was also an air monitoring program that Sierra Club actually donated some money to finance the air monitoring program for a short period of time in an outlying community of the town of Appalachia. And that was presented to the DEQ's airport in Richmond. So I've participated there in some of those hearings as well. As far as like where I think we might make improvements, I believe we really need to be informed about the swinging doors between industry and agency. And I'm talking about the agencies they regulate. I'm talking about that they work for the coal operator that blows up the mountain and destroys it and the streams and community life and human health. And then they quit and they move right over to the industry they regulated. So they're taking a massive amount of knowledge back and forth between the two that makes it really hard. I actually believe they're advising ever whose camp they're in about how to circumvent the process. So I would like to see a plan to make the public aware of permit violations on industry, air, and water violations appear on our local TV stations. I think that's the best way to inform the public. But as far as I know, our local DEQ office does not do that. Instead, if you find out, you must be the one pursuing it. Or they could communicate with our local governing bodies, violations in a public forum. In other words, when they're having a board of supervisors meeting, do it because the press may be there and the press may report. I'd like to know about the pollution of waterways from coal mine permit locations That should fall within the jurisdiction of DEQ because of the water involved. DMLR that has jurisdiction over that water, they're found in the Commerce Department, not in the environmental field, not in DEQ. So that probably, well, let me put it this way. It would likely require a legislative fix, but I think it's worth investigating. And I'd like to say on those TMDLs, this total maximum daily loads, those was required by the Clean Water Act, and they had date lines and deadlines. And we don't know. We don't know where they're at in that progress. So DEQ should prepare a report and allow the communities to know. And I can give you one example. Pound River, 9.72 miles of the Pound River in our county is literally full of sedimentation. And everything that surrounds that is strip mine permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salvage. Thank you so very much. I'm just so thankful for the suggestions, of the strategies, the solutions that you propose, and of course, telling your story. Permit applications, permit violations on TV. What a way to environmentally educate. Going to Mrs. Lewis's point, outreach and education, I also think is so very important, as well as those other strategies that you've indicated. Thank you so very much. Next, let's hear from Kim Washington from the Brown Grove community.
Hold on. I'm sorry, I'm at work, so of course I gotta wear my my mask. But my name is Kim Washington, and I represent the Brown Grove community. I was born and raised in Brown Grove. What we are having in Brown Grove, we have so many industry that have came in Brown Grove and kind of, they look like they're taking over. Back in the day, you know, when I was young, we had the 95 coming in. We had a municipal airport come in. We also have what we have, the Virginia Precast come in. We now have I guess, a debris dump from like dumping from houses or any kind of construction. So they just dump it right there. We also have other stuff that have came and kind of just took over. I'm gonna say kind of took over this community slowly but surely. Because I've been riding around getting pictures and stuff, and I was like, okay, I did not know this was here. But for real, what happened was, I think for a long time, Brown Grove just did not know how to fight it. We all knew that things need to be done. We went, you know, as my parents, they went down to the hearings, the board, and they thought, okay, we're gonna have our comments, express our feelings on how we saying, no, this can't happen. But then they vote, and then they thinking that's it. Because we were not, you know, I think this stuff needs to be taught in school, how to fight injustices. You know, like I said, we never were taught that in school. So now we have Wegmans coming in. Wegmans could have put their big warehouse in any other property, but they choose this one. We won't know for real what the reasons are. They're claiming that the water is not going to mess with it's not going to have an environmental impact on the land, and it will, because we have plenty of wetlands there. They lied about it. You know, once we caught them in so many lies. But this is not just about the wetlands. We also have, you know, a Black community is once again that's been inundated with industry, and it seems like they're trying to move us out, and the delegate that's supposed to represent us, he's not listening to us. He sees his way, and he sees, money. To me, that's all they can see is money, money, money. And they're not seeing us as this is a community. They're not seeing us as this is, we are now in the process of proving that we are a Black community. We've been Black for years, but now we have to prove that we are a Black community. And I've never understood that. I mean, of course, we have other nationalities there, but we are still predominantly Black. And we have to go around asking people, are they Black? And so this is like something that is just crazy. They didn't want to, what's the word I'm looking for? They didn't want to respect that we are here and that we are a brown growth community. So we, like I said, we're trying to prove that. Then we have a thing that for years we've been trying to get these roads. The roads are wet, they stay wet. We get a snow, we get a little bit of rain, it's flooded. You have to go around, stop because you don't want to hydroplane. It's you going this way or you going that way. So we, instead of us hydroplaning, we have to stop before we hit a puddle. I mean, it's not just a puddle, it's a big overflow of wetlands coming into the road. And they haven't done anything with the ditches. We've asked them and they ignored it. Like I said, it's not for us in our best interest to have the Wegmans distribution center there. It's not gonna bring us jobs. And for what I'm hearing, I'm looking at what I'm looking at is they are having the jobs in, I think it's in Lancaster. They're always opening. So why are they always open for jobs? That means you're not paying people enough. So they're not understanding, the powers that be are not understanding. You're not paying people enough. Nobody's gonna live off that money that you're giving them because they can't, you just can't live off that money. But I think the highest was like $15. So evidently, $15 an hour. So evidently, my community is older. So we are still trying, they are retired. They're not getting any jobs. So these jobs are coming in. These people are coming in. We having a 700 jobs. So that means 700 employees are coming in and out across the street from Brown Grove Baptist Church. That's a 150-year-old church. Across the street, which is on Wegmans property, is the Brown Grove School, which used to be, it's not standing, but you have remnants of it. So we have a school that, okay, they finally recognizing that was there. Then they also want to move our graves. Now, if they find that it's on the property, we know it's on the property, but it seems like to me, that's industry. I see in Richmond, they found some graves not too far from in Southside. So they found some graves of some little kids. So now the thing is, let's move the graves for progress. What about this bill somewhere else that has been abandoned? It's some things that we have to change with this expansion. They think everything needs to be built on, and it does not. We have, like I said, we have graves on this property that don't need to be disturbed, but they choose to, it's money. It's all about the money. So first of all, I just want to make sure that we are getting our just, we want people to listen to us. And we had to fight. My parents didn't know how to fight, but now we know how to fight because we have people that are helping us. We have people that are helping us do, like last before, she's helping us get our survey. So we're going around to people in this pandemic. Of course, everybody wants to invite us in their house, but we cannot go in that house. Me and one of my cousins, we were doing surveys in the rain, in the snow. We had to stop because we were freezing. But this is something we shouldn't do just to prove that we're Black. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. We had the Water Control Board hearing. Amongst all the hearings, the last hearing was Friday. We spent, I say from between 10 and 8 o'clock, you know, listening. We had about 4, maybe 5 hours of comments. Nobody was for it, for real. I think they said it was 2 people. I didn't see them. They weren't on the call. They didn't do any comments that I can remember that were for it. But the rest of us, we were against it. It's so many people that are against this thing. They don't see the reasoning, especially now that Lowe's has taken Lowe's corporations. They're going to build a distribution center on one of their properties that Wegmans had considered. And they said that was, you know, it wasn't good for them. So how come Lowe's can build, but you know, Wegmans could not build? So that's another thing we have to do. But I think for the most part, we also have a truck stop. We have a Shell station that has not been properly closed. It's been closed for going on maybe 10 years now. And from what I can gather, you're supposed to get the tanks and all that stuff from out of the ground. That has not been done. Nothing has been done about it. So we had to get, we've been testing the community's water. And like I said, that's another thing, getting the community involved. It's hard getting them involved when all they relied on, well, the DEQ just relied on, okay, we'll give it to the church, but the church does not necessarily speak for the whole community, because some of the community don't even go to Brown Grove Baptist Church. They go to other churches that are, you know, close to us or out. So asking the church to get it out to the community, especially in a pandemic, that's not going to happen, you know. So we've been having to go door to door. We've been having to get the younger people to get on a phone call for their parents, because, you know, a lot of older people, they don't know how to get on a computer and get on Zoom. So we had to do that stuff for them. We had to try to get the younger people involved in order to get the older people, you know, they want to know, but they can't understand how to do this stuff. So they have not been out, other than, well, I'm gonna say they, and when I'm saying DEQ, Army Corps of Engineers, they haven't been out. They came to the church and that was it. And it's our responsibility as the community, and we have formed a group called Brown Grove Preservation Group. And so hopefully, and this is me, my sisters, and a couple of other people, and slowly but surely we're getting the community to at least write some letters to the delegates, write some letters to the governor, write some letters to the editor of a newspaper. Slowly but surely, they're getting it. You know, I'm a hairstylist and I have to do this work. I have to learn how to do this work. This is not something I wanted to do, but eventually the property my parents live on, which is Wegmans, was gonna be right behind their house. Eventually that's gonna be mine and my sister's. So I'm trying to protect that, and I'm trying to protect the heritage that we have. That's it for me.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Washington. I appreciate everything that you have said and done and shared, your whole story, well, at least as much as you could in 10 minutes. So we're connecting here, and we're going to continue to connect and strengthen the work that we do. And I appreciate that we need to be taught how to fight, some of us. Okay. So our next panelist today will be Ms. Charlotte Scott from the Norfolk area. Ms. Scott. Okay, let's go ahead with Mr. Jonathan Dorsey, if you're available. And we can come back to Ms. Scott.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and share our story here. I feel like it's kind of bittersweet to hear all these stories because on one hand, I appreciate the fact that, we're not alone and we have so many people that can help us to kind of struggle through this together. But then it's also just heartbreaking to know that it's not a single problem. It's not just our area. This is clearly a kind of systemic problem throughout the state and likely throughout the country. So I am in actually Bristol, Tennessee, not in Virginia, though the state line is right in my backyard. But in Bristol, Virginia, we have a landfill, and I feel like I'm kind of on the other side of the fight that many of you are facing. So in 1998, they had a proposal to expand our landfill in Bristol, Virginia to start to utilize an abandoned rock quarry. So a company had come in and created a rock quarry. They were finished with it, and now they had this big, huge hole in the ground. Well, let's just start throwing trash in it. We heard similar stories that several of the requests to start to utilize the rock quarry were denied by the Virginia DEQ. We heard as many maybe as 3 or 4 requests and proposals were denied. And then somehow, some way with little to no change, suddenly it was approved. And so they moved forward despite many complaints from the community, from others in the state, telling them this was a bad idea. They went ahead and moved forward anyways. What's interesting about the rock quarry is that there are not many landfills and rock quarries because of the way that they have to divert water and keep water out of the trash and keep it out of, kind of the water table. Being in a rock quarry makes it sort of like a big bathtub. There's nowhere for the water to go, and it sort of just drains in there and sits. And that causes a lot of problems with the decomposition of the trash, which releases more gases that affects the community. So what we've seen, especially over the last 6 months or so, is sort of an increase in the severity of the impact to the community. So we've heard stories that all along, while the landfill has been there, that people close to it have been affected by certainly a really just acrid odor. To even call it an odor feels misleading because it's not just a smell. It will kind of burn your eyes, burn your chest. It causes headaches. We've had a lot of people who talk about congestion problems after they smell it for very long. And over the past 2 or 3 years, it started to expand. It's not just the people right beside the landfill. It's probably a 2 mile, 2 mile radius around the landfill that it's now impacting. That 2 mile radius is hundreds of people with hundreds of households. And so we started to organize, it's kind of one of those things where initially you're kind of like, is it just me? Is it, am I the only one experiencing this? And we found over the last 6 months that, everyone's kind of having the same symptoms. Everyone is having the same problem. We've gotten to come together. So we're utilizing social media. We've been door to door talking to people, just getting feedback saying, are you impacted by the odor? What are your symptoms? And trying to kind of take that to sort of prove to our local leaders and state leaders that this is a true problem. And so I would say we found initially when we went to our local city council and reached out there, when we reached out directly to the landfill, a lot of the response was kind of diversion and deflection. It was blaming the problem on someone else. It was blaming it. We're sort of in an interesting situation where this is state run. This is kind of run by our city. So this is part of the government itself. It's not industry. So they just blamed industry. They just said, look, we've got all these other industrial plants around. It's probably them, not us. And so we had to do quite a bit of work to try to prove to them that it was them. It was the landfill that was causing the problem. They seem to have come around there. They've admitted that they have a problem. They've admitted that there are kind of structural problems with the landfill that need to be addressed. They've started to do some of the work to fix the problems in the landfill. Now, the problem is they're still performing. When we request, what is this odor? What are we breathing in? What kind of pollution is this? Like was mentioned earlier, the DEQ is granting a permit to allow pollution. Like that's essentially their job, right? They're saying we know you're going to pollute a lot. Let's try to put some kind of limit on how much you're allowed to do. And so we've tried to say, like, look, we need to know what we're breathing. It's not enough for you to say, yeah, you got the permit and you're supposed to be at acceptable levels. What is the composition of this odor and what are we having to breathe in every day? And so the problem that we've run into is both from the local kind of city council, the landfill, and then as well as Virginia DEQ. The testing that's been performed is not showing kind of any harmful gases. Now, of course, we know in other scenarios like, you know, Flint, Michigan or something like that, just because you run a test and it doesn't show something harmful, that doesn't mean that it's not harmful to our bodies. It just means that either someone's not running the right test, either out of ignorance or malfeasance, or you know, or we just don't know what it is yet. And so what we've tried to do now is really empower ourselves. So we've started to build kind of prototypes of air monitoring systems. I'm really intrigued by the grant that was mentioned earlier by the Sierra Club to build sort of air monitoring stations. We've started to build some ourselves. So we have kind of some prototypes of how can we monitor different types of pollution in the air and start to, you know, take these and spread them out throughout the community so that we can get real data behind us to take to another level. We have reached out to the EPA. They seem to acknowledge the problem, but they really haven't done a whole lot about it. To get the community engaged, social media was definitely a big help. Once we started to get a good group on social media, probably around 100, we sort of saw a quick escalation of the word spreading. And part of that was just in social media itself, people were sharing there. But then also it was just word of mouth. As more people understand, they're talking to their neighbors, they're talking to their friends, and word just kind of spreads. We were also able to get time on the local news station. So local news has been great to kind of keep the story updated and get our side of the story, not just from the city council or from the landfill. And then we've also gotten some help from the local newspaper as well. So we're just trying to get the word out in every way possible, right? We're on TV, we're on social media, we're getting in the newspaper, we're going door to door to talk to people, and having everyone kind of get together has been a huge help. Having 700 voices is a much more powerful impact to our local community than just a handful or a dozen. So if you have any questions or want to hear any more about our situation here, feel free to send something in the chat. I can share my email. Or if you want to hear more about the air monitoring stations, I can share that as well. They're kind of cool. They're little kind of Internet of Things sensors that are really small, but can sort of communicate through Wi-Fi and upload data to the cloud. So trying to use technology to empower ourselves. But again, I really appreciate the time, and that's all I've got.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Dorsey. Really appreciate your commentary and suggestions, and we're glad that you're technology savvy. Many of us need those skills, particularly in urban areas even. Our next panelist is Ms. Charlotte Scott. Are you available, Ms. Scott? So then we will go to our last panelist, unless Ms. Charlotte is able to join us, which is Ms. Jakura Shabazz, which is a board member of the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative. Thank you so very much.
Hi, everyone. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on as a panelist. It is always an honor to talk about these things, and even a greater honor to put our collaborative efforts in action. My name is Bakira Shabazz. I am a member and a board member of the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative. I'm also the internal policy chair, and I do a lot of environmental work, as you can see, across the state. I am the social justice and health disparities chair with the Green New Deal as well, and I'm a board member with the Virginia Human Rights Network, a board member with the Citizens Advisory Council, new board member with the Citizens Advisory Council with the Chesapeake Bay program. And I have been just involved in this work immensely since I was kind of thrown into it in 2018. My background comes from a criminal injustice lens. I have been fighting criminal injustice for a little over 2 decades here in Virginia and across the nation. And once I came into the environmental sector, I quickly was able to establish the intersections of criminality. It's just on the environmental side, instead of the system coming after the people, it kind of allows corporations to commit criminal acts. That's exactly what is happening, not only in Virginia, but across the world. Our governments are allowing corporations to commit criminal acts. If we were to poison somebody's water, we would immediately be hauled off to prison. If we stole people's property, we would be hauled off to prison. With the mountaintops, if it was destruction of property, we would be hauled off to prison. And so it is important that we are making those parallels and make it very evidently clear of what is happening here, and the stark disparities and how our government chooses profit over people, while our environmental workers are choosing people over profit. And that is where there is a huge disconnect. And if we continue to forge down.
Can you check your audio, Ms. Shabazz?
And so what we see is that folks will get into this work, they'll see what's trending, and then they'll create a platform off of what's trending. And then when they get into office, that platform is no longer a priority, and it becomes a self-centered career expose for that individual. So we have an obligation to also stop that. So I wanted to put this picture up because I'm from Newport News, Virginia, where we are plagued with all kind of environmental tax. To educate these communities, right? Let them know, look, this is what's happening. And there needs to be a readiness plan for this. And it's just not happening. And so I have a son that is disabled. He has chronic lung disease. He is he's about to turn 21. He will never get better. You know, they tell you, hopefully your child will grow out of this asthma. That is the hope for parents who have children with asthma. But I learned very early on that would never become a reality for my son. He's operating at a 37% lung capacity rate. And it took us to move all the way to Tennessee when he was 15 to find that out. And so when you look at the stark disparities in our medical field, when it comes to treatment and knowledge, we're not getting there either. See, the environmental work is like a wheel, and this is the inside of the wheel, and all of the other things, criminal justice, housing, mental health, education, all of that comes out of the environmental sector, right? And so when our communities are being poisoned, when we are being poisoned, when we talk about lead and how lead affects the mental capacity in the body, and yet our judges still won't consider that. Now, legislators won't even legislate to allow that information to come in during sentencing. And so people are sentenced as if they do not have a mental illness that was caused by malfeasance of our government, lack to advocate properly for people. We see many folks that are incarcerated because of the effects of their mental health that have came from lead and other environmental toxins. And we cannot afford to continue to work in silos. We also see that environmental injustice affects our parents when it comes to child welfare. Children are being removed from their home because of neglect, because there's mold, or families are trying to escape hazardous living conditions, and so they become homeless. And so CPS then comes in and removes the child and says that the parent is neglectful. And we just do not have enough time for me to go into that world of work. But this is what's happening. And so we are thinking within our communities that this is horrible, and we know it's happening to other communities. But I challenge you to find out what else is environmental injustice affecting in our worlds that we are not involved with it. And I call myself a multi-intersectional advocate, because wherever there's an injustice, I'm there. And so dealing with the child that is disabled and has been disabled his whole entire life, and they told me when he was born, it was an upper respiratory infection, but it wasn't. He was actually dying of asthma attacks that we did not know was happening. And so he went in the hospital for about 2 weeks, and before they can get it managed for him to be able to come home, and I was no longer able to work. My marriage declined. I ended up separating, and I was very young, 22 years old at that time. And let me tell you how environmental justice affects a parent, a single parent that can't work because their child continues to go in the hospital for long periods of time. And our employment sector could care less because they got to continue to make that profit. And so the only option that was available to me at that particular time, that presented itself to me at that particular time, was 2 Colombians that came to me and offered me this opportunity I thought was of a lifetime, to be able to support, to gainfully support my family, but was criminal. It was a criminal act. And so I became engaged in white collar crime because I could not work. And I'm not apologizing for my life. This life had to happen in order for us to have this conversation today, March 3rd, 2021. I became involved in criminal activity to take care of my children, and I was able to do that very well. And they went on. My son is in engineering at Virginia State. My oldest daughter graduated from Virginia State in the with an agriculture degree. And it took 20 years of that behavior and trying to re-enter into society, which would now not allow me to because I had a criminal background record. But I still continue to advocate because there's so much that's wrong. It's so much that's wrong. And our voices have to be amplified through this matter. And so I am here to say, without waiver, for us to continue to work in a collaborative effort, to continue to magnify the voices and the people, because this is real. This is not something we're just talking about. Say, hey, help us if you can. This is you are going to help us, or we're going to get you out of office. And it is important that we stop working in silos, folks. We hear say, oh, I'm from such and such area, right? We need to know one another throughout all the areas. So if one politician in one particular area is not doing what he's supposed to do, he needs to be in fear, because all the rest of Virginia is familiar with his area, and we will come into your communities and we will educate your constituency ourselves, and we will get you out. This is life or death, and it always has been. This is my children, that is your children, that are also my children. We are a family connected through all of these injustices. And it is time that we start to restructure how we do this. Every year we go to our General Assembly and say, please, can you do this? And we try to make nice with these folks, and we ask them to come to our events, and we allow them to abscond their responsibilities to us. No more. No more can we continue to do that. Most folks think the highest office of the land is the presidency. It is not, folks. It is we, the people. And we have to take our place in the affairs of man, and we have to take that seriously. And until we understand our office of we the people, then the legislators will continue to operate within our capacity. Please understand that they work for us. We don't have any ask. We're telling you what to do because we put you in here and we said this is what we want. And so with that, I'm going to end my little speech and thank you all for coming. And I'm here for any questions you all may have. And let's continue to do this work. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Sister Bakura. We really don't need to say much after that. As you've indicated, and I'm so thankful for your suggestion, actually, that we raise the stories of what's going on around the states. When we talk to people, oftentimes, as you said, we work in silos, or we don't think about what's going on across the, in the mountainous regions or in the coastal regions, but it's all the one state. And so we have to really think, just like with a global mind, a national mind, and look, how's the saying go? Think globally, act locally. We have to, put out pieces together, raise the story, and continue this very important work. I wanted to check to make sure that Miss Charlotte, is she available, or is she's, just want to make sure she has the opportunity to join if she is technically able to do so. But in the meantime, I will get to the questions. So we have a few questions that came up. First, let me thank each and every one of you for those very impactful, powerful testimonies. As we see, this work is not, we're not doing it for the fluff, we're doing it for life. It really is essential. All we're asking for is clean air and clean water. These are the basics of life. That's all that we need. That's all that we really want when you ball all of this, technical and educational and, all these other things that kind of get in the way of basic, good, clean environment. And that's all that we're really asking for. So getting to the questions, we have a question from Mr. Richard Walker, and any panelists feel free to jump in and answer the question. The first question is, can we create legislation to eliminate the Dillon rule, which takes away from the power of the people? And also, how can we mobilize to force DEQ to mandate EJ impact studies before any permits could be issued in any EJ community, urban or rural?
I'd like to take a stab at that, Monica. When we talk about the Dillon rule, we got to consider what that looks like. And most oftentimes, some things that sound like a good idea, right? But we never asked ourselves the last question of every question that we ask, folks. And I encourage all of you all to always ask this question: what about the unintended consequences, right? And so, I catch myself up in this all the time. I'll be like, oh, that's a great idea. And then I got to come back. I'll be like, hold on. What are the unintended consequences? So with the Dillon rule, yes, we can do that. We can do whatever we want to do if our legislators would act right, right? But when we look at, different counties and cities being able to make whatever laws or ordinances that they, and I'll say laws, that they see fit. And as we're going through different communities, we are expected to know what the governing rules are, laws are in each county at that point. And so it reminds me of a young lady that was traveling in New Jersey. She went over into the New York line and she had a firearm, and she did not know that she was unable to carry that firearm in whatever capacity it was. And they hauled her off to jail. Even though what she did was legal in her state, it was illegal in the next state. And she did not know that. And she sat in jail for several months, lost her job. And they continued to convict her. And so what does that look like? Like, what would be the parameters around that? What would keep people safe if we said that each locality would be able to govern in a way that they, basically see fit and are able to sanction in a way that is criminal every year our General Assembly gets together and think of more things that we can't do in order to either incarcerate us or to fine us to death. And so how is that going to impact those that are already impoverished? And so I just wanted to put that part out there and see if we can continue that conversation.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Was there anyone else who wanted to take a stab? Or should we move on to, go ahead.
This is Lynn. Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Kathy. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, when we're talking about air and water, I think we're best at the federal level because the flow of air on prevailing winds and the crossing of water, waterways and rivers don't stop at the state edge. So I just kind of wanted for us to remember that that has to be a higher power because, we pollute one state and dump it all in the next state. It's trying to be clean.
This is Lynn Godfrey. I wanted to the second part of that question about mandating the DEQ do a environmental justice study before it does air permits or grant air permits. It's going to have to be done through policy. I think the defeated EJ bill called for that and it wasn't passed, and which goes back to pressuring our elected officials to let us know, we the people, what we want, what needs to be done. They are requiring, since the current EJ bill, they have been doing environmental, well, they did it in Pennsylvania County. They advised the Mountain Valley Pipeline, but that's just like the fox got in the hen house. So I really think it should be DEQ should have the mandate of doing the assessment and should be should be in charge of that purview in that process. But without policy, it's just going to be right now executive orders. Right now they have not moved on any of the recommendations from the consultants that recommend that they do that. So without policy, they're just going to be talking, but not walking.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I'd like to read a comment from an anonymous attendee who said, it sounds like some of these issues, especially those having to do with public hearings, notice about comments, periods, dealing with county supervisors, etc., could be helped with the assistance of environmental attorneys. Is there no legal help available from law schools or law firms with pro bono assistance? Pro bono, yeah, you guys can shake.
Yeah.
This is Lynn. Many of the campaigns or the fossil fuel build outs that we're dealing with do have attorneys. We do work with attorneys with the larger environmental groups such as Sierra Club. Often we do have, like the Mountain Valley Pipeline, there's a lot of litigation. So with the situation in Pennsylvania, if that goes the way we think DEQ typically goes, that probably will end up in litigation. So there's typically, well, I wouldn't say typically, but there's often lawyers involved. So that is part of the process often, unfortunately.
Thank you. And I think, Lynn, since you were speaking, I think this comment you might be able to speak to, asking about the Air Board Committee on Public Engagement process and their upcoming public comment meeting on Wednesday, March the 10th. I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, that is the deadline for comments for the Pennsylvania County Lambert's compressor station that they're trying to, that Mountain Valley Pipeline is proposing. Well, they submitted an application for air permit. The deadline is March 10th. Or tomorrow evening, there will be a comment workshop party helping people to write comments. So we're trying to get as many comments to DEQ about this compressor station, opposing it as much as possible. So that is that's one of the things that they go into where they call, public outreach. And I mean, it's very perfectionary, and it's just, I mean, so again, if people in a rural area don't have access right now with the pandemic and everything is being virtual, if they don't have access to those means to know that that is done or the tools to complete it, I mean, the process can be very daunting. So tomorrow evening, Appalachia Voices and Power, which is the organization's grassroots organization out in Southwest Virginia, and CCAN is sponsoring a comment workshop. And I'm going to try to get the link and put it in the chat before that we can tune in tomorrow and learn how to do comments. And I would advise, ask you all support in providing comments. I mean, the biggest issue here is outreach to the community. They have not outreach to the community, as well as MVP is misrepresenting what the EJ consultant found. So those two major issues is what we're kind of laying our hats on, as well as the pollution, of course. So I will try to find that link and put it in the chat.
Thank you so much. I am,
Monica?
yes, okay, yes, I was gonna, yes, thank you so much. I was going to ask everybody if you could put in the chat what your 1 and 2, after you've heard all of the testimonies from today, if you could put in the chat what you heard, 1 or 2 or 3 words to focus on what solutions we should go forward with at this point. I kept hearing outreach. I kept hearing education. I kept hearing not working in silos, getting together. So if everybody could just, sort of, put that in the chat, what are the key areas that you heard from our discussions today? I would appreciate that as well. We do have Ms. Charlotte Scott available now. So if we could hear her talk and tell her story from Norfolk. Thank you, Ms. Scott, for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. I greet you all this morning in the name of peace. My name is Charlotte Scott, and I have been fighting this fight over 40 years. I grew up in it. I was born and raised at 2601 Effingham Street, 1 block from the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, and have always felt its discord. I heard you guys mention several things that I had talked about for years and not able to get any response. So I'm very, very grateful to the Most High for allowing it to come to the top. In fact, I believe he's standing right beside it and pushing it forward as much as possible. I believe that's why I was able to get on the Zoom this morning, because at this time, I haven't been able to get on very many, and it's only happening pretty much to me. Now, it might just be my misunderstanding of the internet, but I've been through so much in this over 40 years that I cannot believe that it's not something grossly called. I found another avenue that I'd like to share with you. It's called the Whole Bundle of Rights, and I've been checking into it for a long time and not receiving very much information on it. The Whole Bundle of Rights, when you purchase a property, for those that have, you also receive the airspace above it and the land that you purchase. You purchase the land, you purchase the air above it, and you purchase the water below it. That includes the airspace above and the public highway Congress declared on February 3rd, 2020. So this is being addressed you know, as we speak and move along. We're just not being informed of the rights that are being constantly taken away from that. It was in the 13th century Latin phase, 1587 court case, whosoever is the soil, owns the soil, it is theirs all the way to hell, and that owns the air is all the way to heaven. Some of those rights were taken away from us over the years by not elaborating or not giving acknowledgement to it. Today, with the emergence of airplanes in the 20th century, ownership of the air extends to the airspace above the surface that could reasonably be used in connection with the land. Now we had all the way up to heaven, but since airplanes have come in and skyscrapers, you can sell your airspace. That's what how Donald Trump made his fortune, selling the airspace. Let me see. The ownership today in the 20th century, ownership extends to the airspace above the surface that could reasonably be used in connection with the land. So that's like a few feet above your land surface, but you still own it. And all of these things, I believe that is one of the Bill of Rights. It says that as well in the 20th century came railroads in 1929 in Chicago, and the merchandise mart, and the world's largest building at that time, and Maine Post Office in 1932. Flight over land above airspace reasonably starts at 500 feet. That was a time ago. Above land surface in congested areas of 1,000 feet. Flight over private land cannot interfere with the quiet enjoyment or land use of the land. So it has come down to at least 83 feet above your land surface. That's not much higher than our homes, but because this invades our property, the information states that we are to be compensated for whatever interruption of the quiet and peaceful enjoyment or whatever damage is done to the airspace or the land. This is within the state of Virginia. Those owners are to be compensated. So that is what the industries, and it's probably why this has been kept a secret. I talked to several Black realtors that had no knowledge of this information. And that's what learning to fight means. You have to learn how to dig and research and pull out the information. It had not helped a lot. I have about 21 documents of proof for different injustices that have been done. I talked with Craig Nicole earlier this year, And that was before or while the CHP was being constructed. And with that, I will say that I believe that DEQ and Craig Nicole, you guys don't call names, but you got to learn how to have confidence and courage to do that as well, because they have to be set down and called out. I believe that they grossly complicated that issue so that they could get through. They gave the wrong address 3 different times. It wasn't until it was through that we actually knew exactly where the CHP was. In fact, James Patrick Board and I went directly to the source, to the spot where it was, and we were denied that was the location for the CHP. They started off saying it was going to be 26 and 2700 block of Effingham Street. I grew up in the 2600 block. It attracted my attention, and I knew that there was no place in the 2600 block for it to be, because there's still homes there and people living in those homes. I knew that it couldn't be the 2700 block of Effingham Street, because there is no 2700 block of Effingham Street. Once it crosses, once the street crosses Portsmouth Boulevard, it turns into George Washington Highway. And I'm sure that they have the means to know all of that information and disclose it if they had it in their hearts to. I believe that it was in their hearts to cover it up, all of that information, so that they would receive whatever funds that were involved, that they would receive. It has been a lot of money over people. I heard that mentioned, and I have information that to prove that. In fact, this situation at CHP discloses exactly what happened. They say whatever they have to say to get what they need, and not worry about the people and how it affects them. It's only the Blacks, it's only the Negroes. Every white community within Newtown or its vicinity has been moved, has been relocated, and that has happened for them, but not for us. We're still there 60 years after the first that I can remember white community among us was removed. 60 years. And over 40 of those years, I've been right here speaking out about this issue. And not only that, we have citizens, residents, friends, neighbors that lie and cheat for money for those people that cause the injustice. I call them, what? I call the source, profiteers, and those that help them are the gatekeepers. They finance their own lifestyle with their decisions and what and who they promote. If you check in Portsmouth, Virginia, there's nobody speaking out for the city of Portsmouth and its residents, its homeowners, its renters, except for me. I've got letters that I've written to the Bobby Scott. I didn't write anything to Louise Lucas. I spoke to her personally, and she was so uppity and disconnected that she didn't have, we didn't have a conversation. She just told me that this is not the right venue. It's in the General Assembly, which was not in session in April. This was in April of 20, I think, 19.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Thank you so very much for your for sharing
Well,
that very
can I
important.
say this one more thing, please? Okay. Now that I told you about the home, about the owning the land.
Yeah, well, everybody had 10 minutes, Mrs. Scott. So to be fair
Okay.
to the other panelists, we're gonna keep it going. And also it's about closing time. So I wanted to
this one
together to your comment, which we really appreciate about.
This one suggestion, and there won't be any name calling, but this one suggestion. There are 15 industries in Newtown. Each one of those industries need to pay into a program that would go back to the residents of Portsmouth, Newtown, and its surrounding areas for their. We haven't had lead tests. We haven't had treatment. You know, we don't have the money. We need a fresh air outlet. So those things, those polluters, profiteers should be paying a portion of their profit into a pocket, which would cause a payment to the resident.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so much for that comment, for those comments. As it was previously stated, and it's salvage, as a matter of fact, it's air, it's water, it's land, it's, you know, it's from the top and to the bottom. We also had a question about the threat of gold mining to the Commonwealth. That's a very important question dealing with, you know, what is going on underneath our feet. We have a movement.
That's why the right's being taken.
Yeah, we have a movement around the country, for example, where housing now, affordable housing is being created for people, but they don't have access to the land. So we see that, you know, going on, unfortunately, but again, it's important that we, the people, are here to address those initiatives. So I want to take this opportunity to thank each of our panelists, the program sponsors, for this essential information that's been shared today, and to help understand the current situation that we're in and how we move forward. Please join me to thank the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative, the Virginia League of Conservation Voters, and of course, all of you who have participated in this platform today. It is a pleasure to serve. And I'd like to also invite you to become a partner of the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative. And to do that, you go to our website, which is www.vejc.com, and send an email request for partnership. And at this time, I'd like to turn the program over to the coordinator for Environmental Justice Collaborative, Queen Zakia Shabazz. Thank you. Is Queen here?
I'm sure she is. She's probably experiencing some of the same difficulty that I did. This is a part of the environmental program as well, and can also be sabotaged.
Well, that's true. We do have internet issues. I know I have experienced a great deal of lag while I was on. I see Queen's face. We're gonna give it a minute. Let's see, Roz, are you able to see Queen? You working on that?
Yes, Miss Queen, you should be able to unmute and speak.
And Miss Scott, I think you're incidentally, like inadvertently sharing your screen as well. You might want to stop.
Okay, how do I do that?
It should be, if you go
Because
back
I'm
into
not
the,
seeing anything on my screen from you. There are no instructions.
yeah, I think
Can
if
you
you
all
go,
hear me now?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you. We need to see you too, please.
My
Okay.
camera is on. My camera is on.
We can't see you because Miss Scott is still
Scott.
sharing her screen.
I'm trying to, I don't know what to do. What do I do?
Miss Scott, can you go back into the Zoom down there at the bottom?
It's no longer there.
There you go. Oh no.
That's where I was when you said that I was interfering.
Yeah, I think at the bottom of this screen, there should be a Zoom icon that you can click on.
Are you on your phone or,
Okay.
or
I'm
laptop?
on my phone. My tablet is frozen.
Yeah, and so now you should be able to click the stop share button that's there.
Okay, stop share. Wait a minute. Stop share. Is that it?
I think so.
Looks like
Yeah,
it may
I see
still be sharing.
Lynn and Kim and Kathy. So that must be it.
I see
Well,
everybody
Queen,
now.
well, Queen, you want to go ahead and make your comment? But continue to try to reduce your screen, Ms. Scott. Thank you.
Okay, to reduce it to what? I think,
Okay,
I
there
don't
we
know.
go.
I don't know
There we
about
go.
other people, but there needs to be
done.
a Wi-Fi class as well.
It's done. Thank you. Okay, so again, I introduce our coordinator of the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative, Ms. Queen Shabazz. You have to unmute, Queen.
I'm working on it. I believe, Ms. Queen, you're here under two names. I'm trying to figure out which one. Are you able to unmute yourself right now, Queen Shabazz? I'm gonna make you the host.
Okay, well, in the meantime, we're going to think it is 11:07. We want to thank everyone who was able to join us for this meeting today, and we'll stay on until Queen Shabazz is able to be projected and can make her comments. But we want to thank all of you who have prior commitments and have to leave at this time. You know, we'll of course make this video available to the public. It is streaming on Virginia Conservation League website. Please do share this information with your friends. Look out for the partnership calls that are once a month held to hear more stories that are going around the state. Of course, these are probably likely not the only ones that, as we have heard on numerous occasions, there's a suspicion, but we don't have testing. We don't have, you know, the information, the data that is respected. We know how we feel, but to corroborate that with official data, we're still working towards that. So we, the people, will continue in this work and look out to hear from us on next steps. Thank you again to each of the panelists and all of you all who participated in today's forum.
Will she be getting on? Monica?
I think we are having some technical difficulty. Queen Shabazz is here, but we're unable to mute Queen Shabazz. And Queen Shabazz, I believe you have the host privileges now. That means you're the only one for time being that can end this meeting if you can hear us. I'm sorry for the technical difficulty there, but Queen Shabazz, if you can hear us, you should be able to unmute. And you also have the privileges to end the meeting or make me a host again, or I can do that. I'm a co-host right now.
Okay, well, I've tried calling, so I don't know. We'll just go ahead and are you still there, Roz?
Yes, I'm here. I think we're having technical difficulty with allowing Queen Shabazz to be on camera or unmute. I do see her on the screen, however.
Yeah, I just tried calling her, but I didn't get a response. So I guess we can just go ahead and close it out. We'll
Yeah, well, thank you very much, all. Really appreciate it.
have a great day.
Yeah, y'all have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.